She let a dirty, wounded cowboy sleep in her barn. The next day he signed over 2,000 acres in her name. The wind howled through the open plains of Wyoming, dragging sheets of cold rain across the earth like ghostly fingers. Inside the modest farmhouse nestled at the edge of the Carpenter family ranch, Emma tightened her flannel shirt and glanced again at the clock. Midnight. Thunder rumbled low in the distance, followed by the anxious barking of Dusty, the ranch's aging sheepdog. Emma froze. "Dusty never barks like that unless something's out there," she muttered to herself, reaching for the shotgun propped by the back door. She threw on her jacket, her boots splashing into puddles as she ran out into the dark, flashlight in hand. The barn loomed ahead, tall and silent, except for the hammering of rain on its tin roof. As she approached, Dusty growled low, ears perked, nose pointed toward the far side near the corral. Emma steadied the flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom. That was when she saw him. A man. Or something like one, slumped against the barn wall, soaked to the bone, clothes torn, jeans caked in mud, one leg awkwardly extended, like it refused to work. He raised a hand, slow and trembling. "Don't shoot," he croaked. His voice was raw, like gravel in desperation. "I just needed a place out of the rain. Not looking for trouble, I swear." Emma kept the shotgun pointed. Her heart was beating so loud it echoed in her ears. "Who the hell are you, and what are you doing on my property?" He shifted, wincing as he tried to sit straighter. The movement brought him into the light. A trail of blood ran down from a torn spot just below his knee. His face was partially shadowed by a soaked cowboy hat, but the jawline was sharp and the stubble on his face looked like he had not shaved in days. His eyes, though bloodshot, were clear and strikingly honest. "My name's Caleb," he said. "I ain't got nowhere else to go. Just need one night. I'll be gone by sunrise." Emma hesitated. Every instinct screamed to turn him over to the sheriff. But something in his eyes, some tired kind of truth, stopped her. She glanced back toward the house, toward the windows glowing faintly behind the curtain where her father was likely asleep with one eye open. She made a decision, one she knew she would be questioned for later. "You stay in the barn. One night," she said, voice firm. "You touch anything or try anything stupid, and I will blow a hole in you so big it will echo in Colorado." Caleb's lips twitched into what might have been a smile, had it not been for the exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "Understood, ma'am." She gestured toward the barn door. "There's hay in the back stall, and a blanket in the tack room. You get your rest, then you disappear by morning." He nodded, limping slowly through the barn doors. Emma followed with the flashlight, watching every move. Once inside, he sank onto the pile of hay like a felled tree, his breath ragged. Emma lingered a moment longer, then turned to leave. But as she reached the door, his voice stopped her. "Thank you. I mean that." She paused. "Don't make me regret it." Back inside the house, she set the shotgun back in its place and peeled off her wet jacket. As she did, she heard the floor creak behind her. Walter Carpenter stood at the edge of the hallway, arms crossed, face like stone. "You gonna tell me who's sleeping in our damn barn, or do I need to grab my gun and find out for myself?" Emma's stomach dropped. She should have known he would wake up. "It's a man," she admitted. "Hurt. Looked like he'd been through hell. Just needed a dry place to sleep." Walter narrowed his eyes. "You don't know him from a rattlesnake. Could be one of those drifters stealing livestock out west. Hell, could be worse." "I know," she said, "but something in me said he's not here to steal. He's broken. I saw it." Walter exhaled hard through his nose. "You got a soft heart, girl. That'll get you hurt one day." Emma met his gaze. "Maybe, but not tonight." He stared at her a moment longer, then grunted and walked away. Emma returned to her room, peeling off her damp clothes and pulling on a sweatshirt. She lay down, but sleep was a stranger. Outside, the storm slowed to a whisper. In the barn, a stranger with pain in his eyes and blood on his legs slept among her horses, and for reasons she could not explain, Emma felt something shift in the air, as if the arrival of that man had nudged the course of her life in a direction she had never planned to walk, and she had a feeling, deep in her gut, that he was not just passing through. The first golden light of morning crept across the fields, glinting off dew-soaked grass and turning the sky a soft shade of lavender. Emma stood on the porch with a mug of black coffee, her gaze fixed on the barn. It sat still and silent, as if last night had never happened. Behind her, the screen door creaked open. Walter stepped out, a pair of binoculars hanging from his neck, the look on his face somewhere between suspicion and scorn. "Let's go see what kind of mess you brought home," he muttered, pushing past her. Emma followed him down the dirt path to the barn, her boots crunching in the morning stillness. Inside, the smell of hay and damp earth greeted them, along with the subtle sound of movement. Caleb was awake. He stood in the far stall, shirtless, his wound freshly bandaged, with strips torn from his own flannel. Despite the injury, he was brushing down Dusty, a skittish quarter horse that usually shied from strangers. The horse stood calm under his touch, nuzzling his shoulder as if greeting an old friend. Walter froze. "Well, I'll be damned." Caleb looked up, eyes wary. "Morning. Hope I didn't overstep." The chestnut mare was limping a little, thought she might have strained something. "Just trying to help." Walter stepped forward, voice flat. "You a vet?" "No, sir," Caleb said, "but I know horses. Grew up around them." Walter didn't answer. His eyes flicked from the neat wrap on the horse's front leg to Caleb's carefully rewrapped wound. There was something unsettling about how competent he was for a man who claimed to be homeless and drifting. Emma stepped in. "He's not hurting anyone, Dad." Walter shot her a look, but said nothing. Caleb leaned against the stall door, trying not to put too much weight on his leg. "I'll be gone soon. Just needed to rest the leg a day or two. That offer still stand?" Emma nodded slowly. "Yes. And if you want to earn your keep, there's fencing needs fixing along the north ridge." Walter raised a brow. "You sure that's smart, putting tools in a stranger's hands?" Caleb looked directly at him. "You think I came here to rob you of a hammer and a roll of barbed wire?" Walter stared for a long beat. Then, with a grunt, he turned and walked out. Emma lingered. "You always this good with horses?" Caleb's voice softened. "Sometimes I think they understand me better than people do." She looked at him, really looked. Even wounded and ragged, there was something grounded about him, a quiet strength. She nodded once, then turned to get him some breakfast. By mid-afternoon, Caleb was outside, shirt back on, his limp slowing him down but not stopping him. He worked with focus, replacing broken boards and hammering in new posts. Emma watched from the porch, arms crossed, a dozen questions swirling in her mind. Later, she walked over with a pitcher of lemonade. "Thought you could use this." He took it with a small smile. "Thank you, ma'am. You don't have to call me that. What should I call you?" "Emma." "Emma," he repeated, like the name meant something. He drank slowly, eyes scanning the horizon. "You got family out there somewhere?" she asked gently. He hesitated, then said, "Had an uncle, long gone. Parents passed a while back. Brother, well, that's complicated." Emma didn't push. "You from Texas?" He nodded. "Used to have land, big land, but land ain't worth much if people around you can't be trusted." Something in his tone darkened. She let the silence sit a moment. "Was it your brother who hurt you?" she asked finally. Caleb looked away, jaw tight. "Let's just say he's doing just fine off things that weren't his to take." Emma swallowed. "You're not just some drifter, are you?" He met her eyes. "No, I am not." She nodded slowly. "That horse you wrapped this morning? She belongs to my mother, or did. She passed 3 years ago. No one's touched her since. But she let you." Caleb didn't respond, but his eyes softened. Just then Dusty came trotting over, something clutched in his mouth, a folded piece of waxed canvas. Emma knelt, pulling it free. Inside was an old, creased map, an aerial view of property lines, some hand-drawn, others official. One tract caught her eye. It was marked Rawlins Land. 2,083 acres, in fading ink. Her eyes flicked to Caleb. "Your name's Caleb Rawlins?" He looked like she had just exposed a scar he tried to keep hidden. "Yes," he said simply. Emma held his gaze. "You know, if you're running from something, you came to the wrong place. This land, this life, it's not built for ghosts." He stared down at the map in her hand. "Maybe," he said quietly. "Or maybe it's where ghosts come to find a reason to stay." The days settled into a quiet rhythm, cicadas humming, saddle leather creaking, and horses snorting softly at dawn. Caleb stayed. Walter did not like it, but he tolerated it. Emma noticed him checking on Caleb's fencing work more than once, saying nothing but watching. Caleb rose early, working through pain without complaint. Emma watched how he tested boards with practiced fingers, whispered to horses like old companions, how he listened more than he spoke. One afternoon, clouds rolled in over the ridge, wind smelling of pine and rain. Emma struggled with Bandit, a colt who had slipped his bridle and panicked. "He's never like this," she muttered, gripping the rope. Then Caleb appeared, calm and sure. "Let me," he said, low and even. She stepped back. Caleb approached the colt with reverence, murmuring softly. His hand ran along the animal's trembling side until it stilled. "You talk to them like they're people," Emma said quietly. "They are," Caleb replied. "They remember pain. They trust slow, just like us." He handed her the rope. Their fingers touched. Brief. Electric. He didn't pull away. That night, a power line went down in the wind. Emma lit candles in the kitchen, their glow warming the shadows. She found an old radio and coaxed it to life. A slow waltz played, her mother's favorite. As she sat at the table thinking of the barn, there came a soft knock. Caleb stood at the door, hat in hand, clothes clean, eyes unsure. "Saw the lights were out. I found a radio," she said. "Still works." He smiled, just barely. "We used to listen to the Opry. My mother loved the Carter family. You want to come in?" He hesitated, then stepped inside. They sat at the table, candle between them, music soft. Caleb looked around. "This place feels like a memory, like something you read about but never thought you'd get to live." "That's the nicest thing anyone said about it," Emma replied. He smiled faintly. "It's true." A silence fell, comfortable, full. Emma turned the volume up. Then, standing, she asked, "Would you dance?" Caleb blinked. "With me?" "No, with the dog," she teased, smiling. He stood carefully. "If I step on your feet, blame the limp." In the living room, among old photographs and quiet shadows, she took his hand. He placed his palm gently on her back, and they began to sway. "You're full of secrets, Caleb Rawlins," she whispered. "So are you, Emma Carpenter." She looked up. "I haven't danced in years." "Neither have I." And for the length of a single country song, they forgot the fences, the fear, the past. They just moved together in a house that smelled of coffee and wood smoke, where hope returned like the softest breath. When the music ended, he stepped back, let go of her hand, nodded once, and walked out into the night. Emma stood there, her hand still warm, and something inside her whispered, this wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning of everything. The morning sun broke through thin clouds, casting long golden beams across the Carpenter ranch. Emma was in the barn when Dusty's bark rang out, short, sharp, urgent. She stepped outside, wiping her hands on her jeans, and spotted a black SUV kicking up dust as it rolled down the long gravel drive. Walter was already out front, shotgun in hand, not raised but visible. 3 men stepped out. One was lean, slick-looking, wearing a pressed shirt that did not belong on a ranch. His boots were too clean, his smile too fast. He pushed his sunglasses up and surveyed the land like it belonged to him. Emma joined her father just as the man approached. "Morning," he said smoothly. "Beautiful place you've got here. I'm looking for someone. Name's Caleb Rawlins. Came through this way a few days ago." Walter narrowed his eyes. "Why?" The man gave a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Family, kind of. Business disputes, legal misunderstandings. Just trying to tie up some loose ends. Emma's stomach tightened. She glanced toward the barn. "What's your name?" Walter asked, grip tightening on the shotgun. "Mason. Mason Rollins." Emma's blood ran cold. Mason turned to her. "You must be Emma. Heard you've been kind to my cousin. Real kind. I appreciate it. But you see, Caleb's not exactly the man he pretends to be. He's been running, not just from family drama, from real problems. He's got folks down in Texas looking to ask him some hard questions. I'm just trying to bring him back so we can handle things civilly." Walter looked him over. "And what kind of civil man brings two goons to a ranch run by a woman and her father?" Mason chuckled. "Let's not make this into something it's not. I'm offering a peaceful solution. But if Caleb's hiding here, it becomes trespassing, aiding, harboring. I don't want to involve the sheriff. I'm here out of respect." Emma stepped forward. "He's not here." Mason tilted his head. "That's so? Even if he were," Walter cut in, "you'd have no claim on him." "Not on my land." There was a flicker of irritation behind Mason's grin. "Well, I guess we'll be around a few more days. I'll give y'all some time to think it over. Meanwhile, I'd keep an eye on your livestock. A lot of things can go wrong in a place this isolated." Emma's jaw clenched. "Is that a threat?" "Just neighborly advice." Without another word, Mason and his men got back into the SUV and drove off, tires crunching like bones beneath their wheels. That night, Walter sat cleaning his rifle on the front porch. Emma stood beside him, arms crossed. "You think he'll come back?" she asked. Walter didn't look up. "He already has. That was a warning. Next time will be something else. I lied to him," she said quietly. "Caleb's in the bunkhouse. He stayed close in case you needed help." Walter gave a slow nod. "I figured." He set the rifle aside. "You trust him?" Emma hesitated. "Yes, I do." Walter exhaled. "Then I hope to God you're right, 'cause if you're not, that boy's dragging a storm right to our doorstep." Later that night, Emma found Caleb in the bunkhouse. He sat on the edge of the cot, shirt off, leg bandaged, staring at something in his hands, a photograph. He quickly slid it back into his pack as she entered. "They found us," she said. "I figured they would." She sat beside him. "Why didn't you tell me your cousin was looking for you?" "Because he wants what he always wanted, what never belonged to him." Emma looked at him. "The land?" Caleb nodded. "My grandfather's. He left it to me. Mason tried to steal it through the courts. When that failed, he tried to ruin my name, make me look unstable, dangerous. Hell, he even filed papers to have me declared unfit." Her breath caught. "Can he?" "No. But he can make people believe it if I'm alone." Emma reached for his hand. "You're not?" He looked at her, really looked. For a moment, his hardened exterior cracked. "I can leave," he said softly. "If it puts you in danger." "You're not going anywhere," she said, "not until we know what we're up against." Outside, the wind picked up. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. The storm had begun. It was nearly midnight when the shot rang out. Emma sat bolt upright in bed, the sound cutting through the stillness like a whip crack. Dusty barked once, then went silent. A second shot followed, closer this time. Then came shouting, male voices, struggling. She was on her feet in seconds, grabbing the shotgun by her door and sprinting toward the bunkhouse barefoot in the cold. The door was ajar when she got there. Inside, the lamp had been knocked over. Caleb was on the floor, blood trickling from his temple, 3 shadows looming over him, 2 of Mason's men, and 1 more she didn't recognize. The third man had a boot pressed into Caleb's chest. "You should have stayed gone, Rollins," the stranger hissed. "This land's worth more than your damn pride." Before Emma could raise her weapon, a crack split the air again, but not from her gun. From behind the barn, another shot, louder, heavier. One of the men dropped instantly, clutching his shoulder, screaming. The others spun around. "What the hell?" Walter Carpenter stepped out of the shadows, rifle steady, eyes cold and clear. "You've got 3 seconds to get the hell off my land," he said, voice flat and terrifying, "or I swear to God next one goes through a lung." The two men, still standing, hesitated just long enough to make him serious. "One." They ran, dragging the wounded one between them, cursing, tripping in the dirt. Emma dropped to her knees beside Caleb. "Are you—" "I'm fine," he gasped, wincing. "Head's harder than it looks." Walter walked in slowly, rifle still in hand. His boot stopped beside them. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he crouched beside Caleb and pulled a bandana from his back pocket. "Hold still." He pressed the cloth gently against Caleb's temple, dabbing at the blood with surprising care. Emma looked at her father, stunned. Walter met her gaze briefly, then turned back to Caleb. "I knew that bastard Mason was slimy, but hiring thugs to beat you unconscious on my land? That's personal." Caleb coughed out a pained laugh. "You came back for me." "Don't get misty-eyed," Walter grunted. "You were about 10 seconds from getting turned into horse feed." He sat back on his heels, exhaling hard. "You should have told me who you really were. I didn't think you'd believe me." "You're right. I wouldn't have." He stood, cracking his back. "But I saw the way you handled those horses. The way you fixed that fence, like it mattered. Hell, the way my daughter looks at you." Emma blinked. "Dad?" Walter held up a hand. "I ain't stupid, Emma, and I ain't blind. But I'm also not the kind of man to shoot someone for carrying ghosts." He looked down at Caleb. "That land Mason's trying to take from you, it really yours?" Caleb nodded. "It is. 2,000 acres. My grandfather's. I have the deed. I did not have a place to defend it from." Walter rubbed his chin. "Then maybe now you do." Later, the three of them sat at the kitchen table. Caleb's wound was bandaged again, Emma's hands still trembling slightly as she poured coffee for all of them. The farmhouse was quiet, the windows locked, the doors bolted. Walter leaned back in his chair, regarding Caleb with a different kind of look now. Not suspicion, but evaluation. "I got an old friend in Cheyenne," he said slowly. "Retired lawyer. Used to do land disputes back when people fought over every inch of Wyoming. If you've got papers, he'll know how to make 'em stick." Caleb looked up. "You'd do that for me?" Walter took a sip of coffee. "I'd do it for the man who just bled in my bunkhouse and didn't shoot back when he could have. That takes either guts or peas. Either way, I can work with that." Emma's eyes met Caleb's over the rim of her mug. Something had shifted. Something real. Walter stood. "But if you two are going to keep dancing around each other like a couple of teenagers at a spring fair, for the love of God, do it outside the damn kitchen." And with that, he left the room. Caleb looked at Emma, one brow raised. That was almost approval. Emma smiled, warmth rising in her chest. "That was him saying he trusts you, which for my dad is about as rare as snow in July." Caleb exhaled, slow and deep. For the first time since he arrived, he looked like a man not running, but maybe, just maybe, finding where he was meant to stop. The next morning was quiet, in the kind of way that only comes after a storm. The sun hung low, filtering through wisps of fog that clung to the earth like breath held too long. Emma stood outside the barn, arms crossed, watching Caleb saddle up one of their gentler horses. "You should still be resting," she said softly. Caleb tightened the strap, testing the leather with a gentle tug. "I need to go into town. Your father's lawyer friend agreed to meet." Emma nodded, chewing her bottom lip. "You sure you want to do this?" He looked at her, eyes steady. "I'm not just sure. I'm ready." Cheyenne was 2 hours away by road, but the drive passed quickly. Walter drove, Caleb sat in the passenger seat, and Emma rode in the back, with a folder on her lap. The one containing Caleb's original deed, water-stained but intact, with the name Caleb D. Rawlins in thick black ink. They arrived at a quiet law office tucked between a bakery and a hardware store. Inside, a man in his 60s with silver hair and a cane stood waiting. "Walter," he said, shaking his old friend's hand. "You finally bring me something interesting." Walter gestured toward Caleb. "This here's the last honest Rawlins left. He's got 2,000 acres, and a damn good reason to give it away." Caleb stepped forward, jaw set. "I do not want to fight Mason anymore. I just want that land to be something better than a battleground." The lawyer's brow furrowed. And you want to sign it over to her? He turned to Emma. She blinked, caught off guard. Me? Caleb nodded. You took me in when I was bleeding and broken. You gave me work when you owed me nothing. You looked at me like a man, not a mistake. Emma stepped back, stunned. Caleb? I can't take that. That land's your legacy. No, he said gently. It was my burden, but it could be your future. Walter watched silently, then cleared his throat. You're both young and stubborn, but what you're not is fools. If he wants to give it, and you want to make something good from it, then let it be done right. The lawyer sat them down, pulled out fresh documents. We'll draft a transfer with stipulations. You're not just handing her land, you're entrusting it. I know, Caleb said. That's why I'm here. An hour later, the sun had climbed higher, and in the back lot of the law office, Emma stared down at the title deed now bearing her name. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Then don't, Caleb replied. Just build something with it. She stepped closer, searching his face. You really don't want to go back. I don't have a back to go to. He looked away for a moment, then back at her. But if you're asking if I want to stay... Her breath caught. I do, he finished. She hesitated. Then, with a boldness that surprised even her, she reached out and took his hand. Then stay. That night, back at the ranch, Walter poured himself a rare glass of whiskey. He handed another to Caleb and a third to Emma. To second chances, Walter said. To peace, Caleb added. Emma raised hers. To building something that lasts. They clinked glasses. Later, as the stars blanketed the wide Wyoming sky, Emma and Caleb sat on the porch, side by side in the quiet. You know, Caleb said, breaking the silence, you could have said no. Emma smiled without looking at him. And you could have run, but we didn't. He turned to her. Why? Because, she said, resting her head lightly on his shoulder. For the first time in a long time, something just felt right. And under that endless sky, neither of them said another word. They did not have to. 3 days after the deed was signed, Mason Rollins returned, this time in a brand new truck, with papers in hand and arrogance in his step. Emma saw him through the kitchen window. She stepped outside with Walter behind her, his face already set in stone. Mason swung out of the driver's seat, his smile wide and venomous. Well, he drawled, looks like you've been busy, cousin. Heard you've been playing land baron, giving away property like birthday presents. Caleb stepped out of the barn, his step steady, no limp today. He moved with a quiet assurance that was new, earned. It's not playing, Mason, Caleb said. It's finished. The land's no longer mine. Mason raised a brow. You're right, it's not. Because I've got a court order here, temporary injunction filed yesterday. It challenges the validity of your ownership based on, what was the phrase, mental duress and financial incapacity. Sound familiar? Emma stepped forward. He signed the land over to me voluntarily, with legal witnesses. You have no grounds. Mason laughed. Sweetheart, you think a signed form in a sleepy town holds up against a lawyer with real teeth? That sleepy town lawyer, Walter cut in, served as a legal advisor to the governor for 20 years, and he faxed your court order to the state land board, where it was shredded with laughter. Mason's smile wavered. You think this is over? Caleb stepped closer, eyes locked. You made one mistake, Mason. You came thinking I was still alone. He gestured behind him, to Walter, to Emma, and to the papers already registered with the county. I've got witnesses. A sworn affidavit from a notary, plus 2 letters from former employees stating you forged contracts. You want to dig? Dig. You'll bury yourself. Mason's face darkened. You've always been the soft one. No, Caleb said. I was just patient. For a moment no one moved. The wind kicked up a swirl of dust between them. Mason stepped back. Enjoy your little victory, but this isn't the end. Walter raised his rifle, not pointing it, just holding it across his arms. Calm. Solid. For you, it is, he said. Mason hesitated, then turned and climbed back into the truck. The engine roared and the dust swallowed his retreat. That evening, Caleb sat alone by the paddock, looking out over the fields that were no longer his, but had never felt more like home. Emma approached quietly. She sat beside him, not speaking. "Funny," he said. "I thought giving that land away would feel like losing something, but it doesn't." Emma turned to him. "Maybe because it wasn't just land. It was a weight, and you passed it to someone who wants to carry it, not for power, but for good." He looked at her, then gently reached for her hand. "Thank you for believing in me, when I didn't even believe in myself." She smiled, fingers tightening around his. "You were never alone," she said. "You just hadn't found the right people yet." And as the last light slipped behind the ridge, Caleb realized something Mason would never understand. Sometimes the greatest inheritance is not what you hold, but who stands with you when everything else is gone. A year passed. The Carpenter Ranch, once 80 acres of aging fences and quiet ghosts, now stretched proudly over 2,000 acres of rolling hills, golden fields, and endless sky. But it was not the size of the land that had changed most. It was what it meant. They called it the New Whitaker Ranch in honor of Caleb's grandfather's original homestead name, long lost in legal papers and betrayal, now reborn with purpose. At its heart stood a weathered barn now restored with new beams, repainted in warm red, with a sign above its wide doors that read, "Where the broken come to run free." It had become more than a ranch. It had become a refuge. Old horses no one wanted anymore now roamed open pastures. Veterans with wounds deeper than skin came from nearby towns, drawn by word of mouth and the quiet calm of the place. Troubled teens from group homes were sent there for rural rehabilitation, but left calling it the one place they felt like they mattered. Emma, now more confident and commanding than ever, ran daily operations with grace and grit. Her laughter returned, louder than before, echoing across the fields as she rode with children, taught riding lessons, or helped deliver a foal in the dead of night. Caleb, now clean-shaven most days and no longer limping, fixed what was broken, from gates to hearts. He was never one for speeches, but when a boy who once ran away from 5 homes asked to call him Uncle Caleb, he simply nodded and put a hand on the boy's shoulder. As for Walter, he surprised everyone by staying. He built a porch swing, took up woodworking, and started a project he never told anyone about until it was finished. One evening, as the sun sank low and painted the sky with apricot light, he called Emma and Caleb out to the barn. There, hanging between 2 old fence posts near the corral, was a carved wooden sign, "Whitaker Carpenter Ranch, where we begin again." Emma touched the sign, her throat tight. "You made this?" Walter shrugged. "Seemed fitting. This place gave us all a second shot. Thought it ought to say so." Caleb looked at him. "You sure you're okay being part of that name?" Walter smirked. "I shot a man for you, son. You're practically family." They laughed. But it was more than laughter. It was healing. A month later, on a clear spring afternoon, Caleb asked Emma to ride with him out to the edge of the northern ridge, the highest point on the land. There, under a lone pine that had survived lightning and time, he dismounted and pulled something from his saddlebag, a small wooden box. He opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a ring, simple, silver, with a tiny engraving inside. "Home is where you stay." Emma's breath caught. "I do not have fancy words," Caleb said, "but I have this land, I have a name cleared, and I have a heart that only learned how to beat right when I met you." She covered her mouth, tears welling. "I do not need a church or a crowd," he continued, "just your hand in mine. For however long the sun keeps rising over these hills." She did not speak, just nodded, wrapped her arms around him, and held him there beneath the pine, as wind danced through grass that would belong to both of them now. Months later, the wedding was held in the pasture behind the barn. The horses gathered near the fence like curious guests, Walter walked Emma down the aisle, with a slight limp and a stubborn tear he refused to wipe. There were no tuxedos, no cathedral. Just wildflowers, a hand-built arch of cedar, and a gathering of souls who had once been lost and now stood together. As Caleb said his vows, Dusty barked once, loud and clear, as if giving his blessing. Emma laughed through tears, and when they kissed, even the wind seemed to pause, as if it too was learning how to be still. That night, as stars blinked into view one by one, Emma and Caleb sat on the front porch swing Walter built, wrapped in a blanket, wrapped lengthening, watching the land breathe beneath moonlight. "No more running," she said softly. "No more hiding," he agreed. She laid her head on his shoulder. Behind them, the house glowed warm. Inside, Walter was playing chess with one of the teens who now called the ranch home. Horses stirred in the fields. Somewhere a lullaby played low on the porch radio. "Do you think your grandfather would be proud?" Emma whispered. Caleb smiled. "I think he would have liked you more than me." She smiled. "Smart man." They fell into silence, not the kind that held tension, but the kind that stretched gently, like a hammock in the breeze. And in that stillness, in the heart of land that had seen sorrow, survival, and grace, they lived, not perfectly, not without struggle, but fully, with each other, and for something far greater than themselves. Because sometimes, the greatest stories are not the ones built on wealth or war, but the quiet ones, born in barns, carried on horseback, and sealed with love, that does not ask for anything back, just a place to stay, a place to begin again. Sometimes all it takes is one act of kindness, one moment of trust, to turn a stranger into family, and a wounded soul into a man reborn. Caleb didn't just find shelter that stormy night, he found a home. And Emma, she didn't just give a man a place to stay, she gave him a reason to stay. In a world that often feels too fast, too cold, too divided. Stories like these remind us of the quiet strength and compassion, and the extraordinary power of love rooted in the soil of everyday life. If this story touched your heart, made you smile, or maybe even brought a tear to your eye, we invite you to stay a little longer. Subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories, where every story is a gentle reminder that hope still lives, kindness still matters, and love can grow in the most unexpected places. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, take care of each other.